Palestinian people.
So do you believe, therefore, that in the retaliation or the form that it's likely to take, Israel may be walking into a trap set for it by Hamas?
Of course I do. I think that, let's keep in mind that Hamas is not going to be around to enjoy the spoils of that trap. This was a suicide plan for Hamas leaders. They will be killed, and Hamas militants will be disarmed and either jailed or killed. So it's not.
But many of them are in Qatar, safely ensconced.
Yes,
They
yes,
aren't
yes.
even
I
in Gaza.
understand. Not the majority. The fighters are primarily in Gaza, and they do not have a future. They are dead enders. It's kind of like Prigozhin and the Wagner leadership on their way to Moscow. Like, once you make that decision, you're not there for long. And the long arm of Israel, I mean, you will remember, there have been targeted assassinations in the UAE, for example. I mean, even in Qatar, if you are seen as responsible for terrorism against Israel civilians, you are not safe going forward. And the Americans will help with that. Let's be clear. But in terms of the broader region, yes, if you go to war against a monster, you cannot become a monster yourself. And Israel is in danger in the coming weeks and months of being perceived as a monster as well. That is, of course, that has to be the biggest danger. The blood is boiling right now for any Israeli civilian. The demands of all the families. How could you let this happen? How could our children, how could our grandparents be killed? How could they be held hostage? I mean, this is the fundamental component of the social contract. And the Israelis shouldn't have been surprised. It's not like living in New York as I was before 9/11, and the Americans thought that we can walk down the street anywhere and it's perfectly safe. In Israel, they've been surrounded by enemies since independence. Like, they get the fact that there are terrorists, operating just outside their borders, and that the top priority for the government's to protect them. So again, I fear that the level of hostility, the pain, the emotional anger is now going to lash out in ways that will make some Israeli decision makers forget who they are, and I worry about that, Barkha.
So I wrote those words down as you were saying them, and I'm just going to read them out again. If you go to war against a monster, you cannot become a monster. And let's keep that on the screen for a moment, because I will ask you, and Israelis would ask you, what are our options, Ian? Are you really saying, as a country, given what's happened to us, we should not retaliate? And if you think the way we're retaliating is incorrect, what is the other way to retaliate?
Well, look, I think that Israel has every right to destroy Hamas. Every right. I fundamentally believe that. I believe that after 9/11, the United States had every right to destroy Al-Qaeda. Every right. And I'm not someone who wishes for death, but when bin Laden was killed, I was happy. And that's a reality. That's a reality. And this is a guy, of course, the Americans had worked with historically. So he was a creature in part of America's own building and mistakes. This happens, right? And so if this is Israel's 9/11, and much worse, frankly, given the size, of Israel, and just how many people in the country it has directly touched and affected, their friends, their family members, their community, much, much more so than 9/11 in the United States. They have every right to retaliate. But, Barkha, I think it is a mistake to engage in a siege against the entire population of Gaza. I think it's a mistake to target the 2.3 million people of Gaza, even if Hamas is responsible for that. I think it's a mistake for Israel to allow that to happen. I think that Israel has to do everything in its power to limit civilian casualties. They have to work together with the United States and Egypt to provide the ability for a safe route of passage for innocent Gaza Palestinians to get out. Not anyone that wants to leave, not militants, but certainly you can imagine children, women, the elderly, the infirm, like let them get out of Gaza, find a way. Right now, there isn't such a way. That needs to happen as well. I mean, the Israelis they don't target civilians. They do send leaflets to buildings to let people know that they need to evacuate before they bomb. I mean, Israel is not the moral equivalent of Hamas or ISIS and will not be. But there's a very big difference, Barkha, in this environment between doing the minimum and doing the maximum. And the lives of hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, and I'm not overestimating that, literally hang in the balance here.